Hello again, EnderSword here with another replay from the Silver League this time. We'll be looking at GinsengCamel against SteveFrench, which of course is some sort of mountain lion, for those of you familiar with Trailer Park Boys. We'll be focusing on the Terran perspective today. Our theme for this one is going to be idleness and, again, a little bit of over-teching or over-capacity for what we're doing. There's also going to be a bit of, usually avoid micro, but there's going to be a few big micro things that are barely micro that we'll be looking at that'll come up during the game. So we see a fairly standard Terran opening here. Walling off, it's always a choice to do. A lot of Terrans do it against Protosses. There are ways to exploit that, but it is pretty common, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. There's also ways to defend. What I'm going to do for this game is actually only look at GinsengCamel's point of view, because basically you'll see that's the only view he has during the entire game, as he decides not to bother with scouting or information or anything like that. So we'll look at how that tends to be. Now we see a lot out of GinsengCamel in terms of idleness. He'll send a worker out well before there's enough money to build something. He built the depot and left the worker there before the barracks started. Sent a worker out, it was there for about 5 seconds before the second barracks started, and so forth. So you want to make sure that those are a little crisper. The command center here, again, idle for a bit. He's got enough money to make things, but he's just not, kind of missed an SCV in that window because he wanted to get that barracks out quicker. Again, this SCV sits there after making that barracks idly. What you can do is actually shift-click a worker to make something, and then shift-click them back to the mineral line. In this case, he would have wanted one of these to make the second depot, but this one was already idle by the time it was done. The first worker could have actually been back in the mineral line making or mining more things. So you can actually lay down that building and immediately shift-click back to the mineral line. When it's done that production, it will just return back here and then start mining for you. So you can't just forget them at a building like these are. That's 2 workers that you could easily have back home. Now the other thing I'll point out here is there was that incredible rush. We even cut an SCV to make sure that we could get these 3 barracks out in time to not really produce from them. Right now he's just, for the first time, gotten all 3 going. They were sitting there idle for a while. So he's got 3 barracks out, but actually only 3 Marines. This one goes idle, this one goes idle. And as we see this one pop out, they're idle. So we rushed those out very quickly. He could have had this production just as easily off of 2. And we've got that SCV sitting there. Note that the only scouting was a single scan. There hasn't been this SCV that is available and has not been used for quite some time to go up. Again, back here, the production was missing for a bit. He just picked it up as soon as I clicked on it. The barracks, which have in total only produced these 6 Marines so far, could have been a lot more by this point, have decided to add even more production by adding reactors to them. He seems to be setting himself up to produce a ton of Marines, but we see after that reactor is done, again, no production there. This reactor is done. Starts over here. This one's not ready. So again, without these reactors even available, he could be producing the 3 Marines that he is producing. Just bought 2 reactors for whatever reason. So always be aware that when you are attacking to something, when you are adding to something, I'm not saying it's bad to get this formation, but if you're doing it, be aware that you can support it or that you're actually producing. It's not a matter of not having enough money in this case. It's just a matter of forgetting that's what he's doing and not actually producing out of it. Then on top of these not really being used, we actually see a factory going down as well. So he's just getting a little ahead of himself in terms of what he's doing. This original setup is really set up to be a bit of a rush, to really pump Marines out as fast as possible at the expense of teching up. Then subsequently adding tech to that isn't necessarily coherent with this original plan of getting things out very, very quickly. So that kind of comes in behind. He decides to push out here and then makes one of the more classic mistakes that people do is once their army starts to leave their base, they forget about their base for a while. Again, the production goes silent. He brings things up, makes a second factory before he's produced anything out of this one, adding a tech lab on. A supply block himself, not really adding another supply depot or anything. Basically, his attention is now on this army. And once that has left the base, everything has kind of halted at home and things have kind of fallen apart. That's something that people tend to get into. Now, I mentioned earlier that micro wasn't usually something I talk about, but this is a bit of a mistake on both parties. When you're making a move, really anywhere that you don't know what is ahead of you, it should pretty much always be an attack move, or else you get this passing in the night scenario. Now here, it's not a huge micro situation that when zealots are right against you, you should be pulling back, stopping, pulling back, stopping, just so that they're not completely pressed against you. He could have won that battle with just a small bit of control over that army. It doesn't really require a lot of micro-intensive APM type stuff, but simply attack moving it in when the other army was just move commanding, and then just backing up a little as those zealots were engaging would have been enough to win that battle. We see the rebuild done at home, and despite the rush to these two factories, again, nothing is being produced out of these two factories until just now, and this has been around for quite some time. And we're just now getting some sort of siege tank coming out of it. Ginseng's awareness of SteveFrench's base is still limited to exactly what it was from the original scan in the first couple minutes of the game. Not couple, but a few minutes of the game. So when this comes, he's completely unaware. Focuses down that. Again, not very good to have everything not attacking at the same time. And we kind of get overwhelmed here when that force probably could have been able to hold that and prevent that depot from going down simply by moving everything fairly quickly into it. But the bigger thing to note here, even with that total mismanagement of forces, while being attacked and with 750 minerals, he just now begins to queue things up. During the entire battle, nothing was building. Just after he lost the battle did he actually start to produce. It's got to be your first thought to constantly keep those barracks going, keep those factories going, keep production streaming out. That force, look at what's left before these reinforcements come in. There's 4 things that are half dead. This has 9 hit points left. That was down to 2 hit points. If he had gotten 5 Marines out of this, he could have cleaned that up before that force came in. He could have completely held this and recovered. He would have been fine. He would have gotten another siege tank out. It would have been completely all right because this, as we see, is the only reinforcement coming through. So those are the main points in this game. Again, this was a Silver League game. The things that I want to stress here is, 1, tunnel vision. He absolutely did not care what the other side had. He just decided, I'm going to build this, and then when I get a certain amount of this, then I'm going to go attack. The attack was not decisive in any way. It wasn't really an attack. He went to check if there was something at the natural. He went to check if there was something at the gold base. If your attack moving out is scouting, then you weren't scouting enough before. When you move an army out to hit something, you should already know whether or not it's there. And that's a general guideline. If you ever feel like you're attacking into something and you're like, oh, I hope he doesn't have a Colossus by now. I don't know whether he expanded here. I don't know. If you don't know that sort of thing, odds are you're not scouting enough and you're not aware enough of the situation. And you should be working on that as part of your game. Also, when you do move that out, make sure you are decisively going towards a target that you know that you're willing to engage. And as we saw up in this corridor, make sure that you're attack moving, or at least keeping your eye on an army when you're in enemy territory there. But the overarching theme to this game was really the production. That there was a rush to get these barracks out, a rush to get these reactors on, a rush to get these 2 factories up, and they weren't producing anything. The same exact production could have been accomplished without this, and without that. These 2 barracks, tech lab and factory, could have produced, in the amount of time we saw, the entire army that we saw. This one was entirely unnecessary. It may feel necessary to you because your army seems too small without it, but if you watched a replay of your own games, you may find it's small because you are not using these to 100% of their potential. If you leave idle time, it may constantly feel like, oh, I need another barracks, oh, I need another factory. But never at any point were these 2 producing at the same time. There was no need for both of these. So that's money that could be better spent elsewhere. And then, of course, overall, don't lose the plot when you're in an attack. When you're in an actual battle, when he's coming up that ramp, your first thought should be, I got to make sure that my macro is still going. I got to make sure that my reinforcements are coming so that I can hold it off and reinforce myself. This could have easily been stopped, and both players are in a fairly similar one-base position with fairly similar levels of tech and what they have available. So had this been held off, it could have been a fairly even game. But it just wasn't. It just wasn't held, and it was because of that macro slipping. So before you worry about what units to make or what type of strategy you use, just remember constant production is what keeps you ahead. I'll be doing a few more of these. I hope to add a few more silver games and a few more gold games before going back to bronze, but I do hope to cover all 3 leagues. So let me know if you have any feedback on what's most helpful. I'll try and set a theme kind of for each game of what I'm focusing on, and try and find replays that are good for that. Thanks for watching.